Going back to our developing Simon effect experiment, let's continue the setup of the stimuli. So far, we have randomized the color of the boxes. Next, we will handle placing the boxes on the left or the right and randomize those two conditions together. Currently, we are using an integer array to describe our trials. Each value in the array essentially represents the color. In our case, it is used as an index into the array of colored boxes. If we wanted to randomly change the side without regard for which color box we were using, there are a number of simple ways to do that. However, for proper statistical analysis of the experiment, it is best to have the same number of color position trials for each combination of colors and positions. To set this up, we will need to store two pieces of information for each trial instead of just one, which color and which side. We can't do that with the integer array we have now. What we need is a type of array in which each element can contain multiple values. This type of array is called a multidimensional array. The arrays we have seen so far are called one-dimensional or 1D arrays. 1D arrays contain a list of values. A multidimensional array is an array whose elements are arrays. In particular, a 2D array is an array whose elements are 1D arrays. To make a 2D int array, we use the same declaration format as for 1D arrays, but we add an extra pair of square brackets. The size in the second pair of brackets gives the size of the 1D arrays contained by our 2D array. Therefore, A2D is an array with two elements, each of which is a 1D array containing three values. We can visualize these two array variables like this. We can initialize 2D arrays with lists of values using nested curly brackets. After initialization, we can visualize the arrays like this. To access elements in arrays, we use square brackets with an index. We can do the same thing with 2D arrays, but this time the result is a 1D array. In order to access a particular integer value in a 2D array, we need to add another index. In this case, we first access the second 1D array and then access the first value in that array. It's possible to have arrays of any dimension. For example, a 3D array is an array that contains 2D arrays. Going back to our experiment, we will only need to use a 2D array. Each element will be a 1D array which describes the color and location for one trial. Conceptually, we want something like this. In our program, we will use a 2D int array. This array will contain a 1D array of size 2 for each trial. In the case of color, we can continue to use an index into our array of boxes just as we did before. Right now we have two boxes, so this value will be either 1 or 2 for each trial. We can also use the same strategy for the location. That is, we can create an array that holds coordinates for the locations we are using. Since we are only interested in the horizontal location, we can use an array containing the x coordinates. Now we can use an integer, 1 or 2, to describe the location as well. Before we handle the complete randomization, let's just set up a couple trials by hand and get it running. If we use the first value for color, the values for the first trial, 1, 2, call for a red box on the right. This is because the red box is the first box in the colored boxes array, while the second coordinate in the x positions array is on the right. Likewise, the second trial values 2, 2 call for a blue box on the right. To get this working with the new array, first switch to the new name. Now the expression trial list will refer to the 1D array for trial I. To get the index for the correct box, we need to use the first element by adding another pair of brackets. To set the location, we use the pictureSetPartX method. This time, we take the second element and use it as an index into the x positions array to get the coordinate. The first argument to set part x specifies the first picture part in the picture. Running this, you should see the correct configuration for these two trials. Now let's populate the array with the same number of trials for each available combination. We can do this using a nested loop. First, we loop over the available indices for color. Then, for each color index, we loop over the available position indices. We are going to randomize the trial order, so it doesn't matter in what particular order we add them. To illustrate what's happening in this nested loop, we can print out the values. The first time through the outer loop, C is 1. While C is 1, P loops through the values 1 and 2. After the inner loop ends, C becomes 2, and the inner loop runs again. This results in all possible combinations of colors and positions. Of course, we will want to show the same trial type multiple times. To make it clearer and also easy to change, we'll first store the number of repetitions in a variable. Then we can repeat the same values multiple times in another loop. Finally, we can add these values to our array by making a 1D array for each trial and adding it using the array add method. Again, the first value is the color index and the second value is the position index. The array add method will make a copy of our 1D array and add it to the trial list array. You can run the program at this point to see all the combinations presented in order with repeats. To randomize the trial order, we use the array shuffle method after all the values have been added. There is one improvement to this code that will make it more readable and less error-prone. Notice that when setting up the array, we put the color index in the first position. Then, when configuring the stimulus, we had to remember that the color was first. Instead of having this arbitrary choice hidden throughout the code, it's better to make variables to keep track. The color variable will be the position of the color information, and likewise for position. We're using a convention that variables in uppercase represent values that are not meant to be changed. Now, whenever we need to access that information, we can use this variable instead of writing 1 and 2. Not only is this more readable, but it keeps us from accidentally using the wrong number in different parts of the code. Finally, we can demonstrate the flexibility programmed into this experiment. Suppose, for a different experiment, we needed to use 3 colors, 3 positions, and 4 repetitions of each. To do this, add another colored box to the colored boxes array, then change the value of the repeats variable. Then add another position to the X positions array. You can now run this program with no other changes and it will still do exactly the right thing.